Jessica and I work together at Advantix Digital. She has an amazing experience in the space. She's worked for very big agencies and has run campaigns for Southwest Airlines, J.Crew, Intuit QuickBooks, and TurboTax. So she's got a lot of experience across different industries. And she'll be telling us a little bit about what she's seeing across all verticals. And then we're going to start moving by vertical, where each one of the speakers will talk specifically a bit about their own vertical. Jessica, the floor is yours, and thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Amin. I appreciate the intro. Welcome everyone to our first webinar. It's really exciting that you're all here and for us to have you. Today, to Amin's point, I'm going to be talking about the digital journey to recovery. As you guys know, the word journey in digital marketing really represents a customer path and engagement between brands and customers, and understanding a journey that one goes on to identify products and brands that will be used by customers from different areas of their life. And so with that, the customer journey has really seen a shift because of COVID-19. I'm sure a lot of you have seen a similar graphic to this previously, where it shows the customer journey throughout a day, a month, a week, at different touch points. And that journey really starts out on a typical day, maybe at your home, while you're having coffee in the morning and you're on your phone and you get an ad. And then you go on your journey to work. And on that journey, you listen to a podcast or the radio, or maybe you see a billboard about that company and you get to work and you're curious. So you look on your desktop and you start talking to coworkers about your experience and their experience with that brand. And maybe over lunch, you decide to check out the products in store and go experience it yourself. Then on your way home, you might experience another touch point with that brand from that billboard again, or maybe another podcast or a radio ad. And you get home, talk to your family about the good or service. And then maybe after dinner, you get on to watch Netflix, and on your phone, you make a final purchase. And there's a lot to that journey, right? A lot of people involved, a lot of places, a lot of areas for that brand to make a message and reach you. But what if that journey goes from that outdoor experience and out of world and goes to in-home? As with COVID-19, everyone is working from home for the most part nowadays, and mobility is very limited. So a lot of those typical touch points that you would have had with those people in their journey has now moved indoors, and mainly it's gone digital. And not only has mobility changed, but also people's work has changed. And it's changed by household incomes. It's changed by the ability to actually work from home or to have to go into the workplace, and how people are interacting. For example, if you're within the top household income earners, you're 61% more likely to be able to work from home. But if you're within the bottom 25% of income earners, you only have a 9% likelihood to work from home. And that makes your relationships with other people and your interactions very different. Also, if you're in the healthcare industry, it doesn't really matter what your income is. The majority of you are going to be working from the office or your place of work, but that creates engagement with people who may have COVID-19 and have health risks. And so your relationships with your family and friends might also be impacted, because you can interact with them on a personal level less, because you're interacting with people in healthcare more. And so all of those things really make an impact on who the customer is and their livelihoods and where they're getting their information and how they're interacting. And not only does COVID-19 have impacts on where people are working and how they're interacting, it also has a major impact on their employment status. And that translates into their ability to spend. And so, within the last 4 weeks, we've seen over 22 million jobs or jobless claims be filed. And we're continuing to see a decrease in that week over week as more people have job stability, as things like the PPP loans that have come out from the government have helped keep jobs around. But still, there's a lot of insecurity that is going on with consumers right now because of COVID-19 and the job loss that's been associated with that. And again, with job loss, it comes up financial insecurity. And on average, the average couple that's about 34 years old has about $4,700 saved in their bank account. If you're looking at single people around that age, they've got about $2,700 in savings. And how long is that going to last them over the foreseeable future if they are also paying their mortgage or their rent, their income, and have all of those expenses as well? So these are things that we have to consider as marketers on the impact of our target audiences and where they are. And that also translates into their ability to spend. At the beginning of COVID-19, we saw a huge decrease in discretionary spending, especially on verticals like travel, because you can't travel at this time, or entertainment, because a lot of entertainment venues have had to close down, and events. But we saw a huge spike in spending for very needed items like, hand sanitizer, groceries, work from home types of products. And so, really, the trends have been very fascinating to watch and interesting to see what's been popping and what hasn't. But for marketers, we need to understand, what is that curve going to look like as we start to reopen? Now that we know the trends from before, where can we start to predict what's going to be important to consumers as we do have gradually reopenings of businesses and government, and people can go outside of the home? And really, to answer those questions, you have to do one major thing, and that's relearn your customers, because they're very different than they were 2 months ago in February, before all of this happened. And they're going to continue to change in their needs over the next weeks, months, and foreseeable the rest of the year. And so understanding your customers and their new needs, and understanding how you can provide value to their new needs and what that looks like, is really going to help you win with your customers, develop lifetime relationships with them, and be able to talk to them with more value. A large part of understanding their new needs is understanding, their behaviors as well. In the first couple weeks of COVID-19, there was a lot of categories that changed drastically. For example, searches and purchases of luggage went down 77% within the first couple weeks. And bread making supplies went up 652% within the first couple weeks. So people were trying to find new things to do at home. We saw a spike in working from home technology, for example, webcams. And all of those things really created impacts across many different categories of devices and consumer products. And with that, what we can say is this was very interesting data of things that happened in the past, but where do we predict things will go in the future? So really trying to understand what your consumers will need as we reopen is going to put you ahead of your customers and, again, provide that value. Especially in a time where consumers are likely to switch brands. People have been loyal to brands for years and years and years, but what happens when those brands are no longer available because they're only able to be gotten when you're in store? As things are going online, people are open to experiencing brands in new ways. People are using delivery services like Uber Eats or Grubhub at a much larger rate, and new people have come into that space, as well as box delivery services like a Blue Apron or a HelloFresh. And so with those changes in user behavior and the ability to get products that they need, they're open to developing new relationships with brands. And that creates a huge opportunity for brands to, again, provide value, be there when customers need this in this new time, and then develop those relationships over time to have lasting relationships with those customers over the next few weeks, months, and the foreseeable future. About half of people who have switched brands during this time are expected to continue using those brands if the relationships have been positive outside of the COVID-19 trends. So again, it's very important to be there when consumers need you during this time, because they are open to those new opportunities. And speaking of, consumers are very optimistic. We are seeing that among millennials, Gen Z, and higher income earners, that people are optimistic on the reopening of businesses and the government and where we are going with COVID-19. And that really is a positive trend because it translates into consumer confidence and spending. Now that we are seeing the job layoffs and unemployment rate start to slow, people are a little bit more sure-footed of their financial future. And because of that, they're open to increasing their discretionary spending, and they have a better view of their financial future, especially when it comes to their job availability. And so with that, and the economy starting to slowly increase, we are seeing that consumer confidence is up. And we're not just seeing that in survey data, we're also seeing that in digital marketing data and trends. And so a lot of publishers and people who manage millions and millions of dollars in ad spend are putting out data right now for us marketers to use as proxies. And so by having multiple platforms and vendors share all of this data, we're able to start to see trends at a greater rate. And so not only at Advantix Digital are we seeing consumers start to have higher conversion rates and also spend more, and so we're seeing return on investment grow, but also other publishers that are putting out their data for us to inform ourselves on what's happening in the marketplace are also seeing vertical trends start to pick up in terms of conversions and purchase, which creates, again, that opportunity for advertisers to be there with their brands who can provide that value to consumers. So really, all of that comes to meeting customers where they are now with more value. And not only does that provide value, more value for them, right? So brands need to provide value to their customers, but also brands can get more value out of what's happening currently in the marketplace from a marketing perspective. During COVID-19, a lot of advertisers pulled back their spend, especially in the travel verticals and entertainment industry. And most likely your consumers, even if you're not in travel and entertainment, like to travel and be entertained. And so with that, if advertisers are pulling budgets away from your target market, that means that there is less competition for your audiences in market. And in an auction-based system, if there's less competition in market for your audiences, and there's a lot more availability as digital presence from people is starting to increase, and there's more demand for digital from a user perspective, that creates a opportunity for us within the auction to get better rates and reach more people with less money in a less cluttered market. And so we are seeing across the board from both a web and a app perspective, usage increase across multiple mediums, not only in social media, but news consumption, connected TV consumption, traditional TV consumption, all mediums in home where people can and watch entertainment and find things to do. We are seeing drastic increases. And one amazing stat that I've seen is the increase of millennials on TikTok itself. Not only are people using apps and technologies that they've used before, they're also downloading and introducing themselves into new waves. And so we are seeing changes in the marketplace of audiences available on platforms such as TikTok, which tended to be a younger audience, but now because more millennials are using it, it's starting to change in the portfolio of people that are within that platform. So again, not only are we seeing usership increase, but we're also seeing the dynamic of the target audience change across platforms that may or may not have been as used prior for different audiences. And again, from a connected TV perspective, a lot of people are now cutting their traditional cable and moving more to connected streaming services, especially ad related services where we can, from a marketing perspective, run connected TV or OTT type of advertising. And so from a demand perspective, there's a lot more customer demand for those services and viewership hours, and thus more ad inventory for marketers to take advantage of there, with reductions in other advertisers being in that space as well. And not only is viewership increasing, but engagement is increasing too. So from a time spent perspective and a number of pages perspective for people going through websites and content, they're spending more time and they're looking for more things and being more engaged overall, which is exactly what you want from an audience in which your ads are placed in front of, is that engagement and making sure that people are actually seeing and resonating with what you're putting in front of them. And again, with higher engagement, with more ad inventory available because there's more consumers in digital and lower ad spend from advertisers in general, we're seeing a great reduction in CPMs. And this is just one area in which we're seeing it, which is Facebook. But as Facebook is one of the major players in digital marketing, this is a good proxy for other publishers as well. From data that has been put out, we're seeing CPMs drop, between 20, 30, 40%, depending on your engagement and conversion goals, and also the types of media that's in market. But again, this is a time where advertisers can get into play in spaces at a much cheaper rate, reach more people in their target audience, and get in front of a very engaged audience. And it also depends on what consumers are engaging with, but they're engaged in various places, and all of these places represent areas for brands to come in and create a conversation and provide value. So no matter what brand you are, you want to be where the consumers are and provide that message that's relevant. And so there's a lot of places across the digital landscape that you can engage with customers in a very relevant way. It's just understanding the data, understanding your new customer journey and who they are at this point, where they're going in order to engage and find value in those places. So this has been a lot, and there's a lot of moving pieces here. So where do we start? As marketers, looking at the current landscape, it's changing at a very constant basis. So how do we start to build plans that will resonate for the future? And how do we execute on the things that we currently know? The first is to, again, relearn your customers, understanding them now, their current behaviors, where they are, and then trying to help anticipate where they're going to be next week, over the next couple weeks, within the next month, and then outside of COVID-19, what is their new landscape? And taking into account all of the factors that may have impacted their job status and their friends, their family, their current need state. Then also reassessing your value. How do you provide for those customers in their new need state? What kind of messaging will resonate with them? And how can you build relationships that will be able to be sustained outside of the current pandemic? You also need to be there. There's a lot of brands that I've talked to and heard from that have pulled back in spend in paid search, for example. But if people are raising their hand and saying, hey, I have a need and your service or product matches that need, you have to be there, because most likely your competitors have also pulled back. But if they are still there, you still need to be there where your competitors are too, because the worst thing could be right now is if you are not the brand of choice coming out of this, and if someone else has been there during the time, provided that value. And so making sure that you're there and going to be the brand of choice when people are able to shop after this or during this time will again create relationships that are long lasting. And that really speaks to the visibility and engagement piece. Stay engaged with your current customers. Tell them you're there. Make sure that they know how they can engage with you right now. What are your availability for shopping with them, your hours, all of those types of things will again help encourage them to be with you during this time, and also start talking to those prospects as well, and nurturing those relationships outside of just the people that you're currently engaged with. And then also you need to stay informed of the available incentives that are out there. Facebook, Google, Yelp have provided a lot of grants to help marketers and brands keep engaged during this time. But there's also things to help your customers provide value as well. So if you know that there are things that are coming out that could help your customers, translate that, pass it on, because all of those things will again create that loyalty and help build that relationship. And additionally, from a strategy perspective, you really need to prioritize your consumer experience and the relationship with those customers. Keep watch of industry trends as they are continuing to change. We have to be adaptable in our strategies. There is something for planning ahead, but you have to be agile because things are changing at such a constant rate. So you have to be open to that change. And as digital marketers, we are usually open to change because things change so quickly on all of the platforms that we use consistently, but just making sure that you are available to change and watching for trends and making sure you're pivoting depending on the trends and the data that you're seeing is important. Also, there's a little bit of risk involved as well, but it's much better to make sure that you're acting now and being ahead of the game. There's a lot of industry articles out there and studies that have shown that in recessions, the brands that do advertise and try to provide this value during this time usually come out ahead of those that don't. And so being there while customers are searching for you, being top of mind for customers in market, or who might have to pause on being in market now, but might come back later, all are very important to, again, being on top of things as things recover and getting out of COVID-19's impact in the current state. Thank you for watching my webinar on the current state. And I think Amin has some questions for me, or if there have been other questions that have been asked during this time, I'm happy to answer a few of those before we move on to the next speaker.
Thank you very much, Jessica. And I forgot to mention to the attendees that they have the ability to submit questions on the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen. But I do have a question for you that I've received. And the question is, what is one important strategy that we can use to engage current customers right now?
So one thing that you could be doing to engage your current customers right now is to ask for reviews. So about 90% of customers in the US will make purchase decisions based on reviews. And about 81% of customers will actually pay more for a product if it has positive reviews. And during this time, as people have a lot of availability online and are digitally present from working from home, they have the time and the energy to write reviews. People love to talk about their experiences and themselves. And so now nurturing your current customers and asking for those types of reviews while they have the time to write them is a perfect way to, one, build your business, and then also nurture those relationships and get candid feedback on the value that you're currently providing.
That's awesome. So the first question I have for you is, with reviews on hold via Google, what other platforms do you recommend?
So for reviews outside of Google, because right now Google is currently paused with reviews due to COVID-19 and people posting unfortunate reviews like 1 stars for businesses not even being open. There are other ways to generate reviews through Yelp, Facebook, and other industry related aggregators. So for example, there's, from an advertising agency perspective, aggregators like Clutch that we ask clients to review us on, that's related to our industry and helps us find new clients. So those types of things, just go for the Yelps of the world, the Facebooks of the world, but it really depends on your business and your industry. I know another question that was also asked was about the deck. It will be available after this. We're also going to send out the recording of this entire webinar afterwards for your reference. So those resources will be available to you as well.
Yeah. And you have actually another question. And the question is, what is the best-in-class approach for brands' voice tone in their messaging as its relation to the coronavirus? Some companies have really embraced it, while others have avoided it altogether. How do you ensure you're not being tone deaf? When I see luggage ads or travel ads right now, I think, yeah, right. You know, same can go with other verticals like event-based apparel, for example, prom ads.
Mm-hmm. So it really depends on your brand and your voice. I think people who are doing it right, that are in the travel space, for example, are making fun of themselves, right? And so basically poking fun at the fact that you can't really buy their product right now, but knowing that once this opens up, you want to go on that trip, you know, those types of messages do resonate. And they say, hey, you know, when you can go to Cancun in the near future, bring a fashionable piece of luggage with you and you'll be set. You know, those pre-planning things. So just, again, you know, sometimes it is embracing what's happening and bringing that message together. That doesn't work for every brand, and it doesn't work for every brand tone. So, you know, you really have to know what your brand voice is, work with your creative team to make something that's catchy. You know, it doesn't always have to be that Oreo Super Bowl, you know, Twitter moment. It can be something that's, you know, small, but makes a difference to the people that are your target audience as well. So I would just consider all of those things. I would say the one thing that you don't want to do is take advantage of the situation and, you know, be blatant in your messaging, and, you know, make sure that when you are messaging around COVID-19, it's with, you know, white kid gloves, and you're making sure that you are being sensitive to people in their current states, because there's a lot of emotional impact that COVID has had. So the one thing you don't want to do is be insensitive in your messaging and go too far. There's definitely that line. So as long as you're, you know, more positive and keeping within those types of themes, I think you'll definitely, you know, have more success than not. The question was, what do you recommend for law firms, especially personal injury, where in most states there's stay-at-home orders, and how to market and reach out to the community when there are little to no accidents due to people staying at home or not being on the road. So there are quite a few industries out there that are pretty much on hold because of COVID-19. And with those, especially when it comes to law firms, we have a couple of law firm clients in which we have similar scenarios. And what we're doing is knowing that right now our message probably won't resonate because it is a once an action happens, then they can reach out for your services type of scenario. We are planning for the future. So right now, a lot of our efforts are focused on building the customer experience on the website. So a lot of SEO, search engine optimization, to make sure that we are ranking well organically, making sure the user experience on our site is really positive and action focused. So looking at, you know, materials like Hotjar and some of those other UX UI type of programs, so that we can identify how users are interacting on the site and make improvements to that experience. So really investing in the customer experience during this time, and also in our search engine results from an organic perspective, driving content on the web page to help users understand how they can work with your business during COVID-19, but also after this. So those fundamentals are really a big priority for brands that cannot advertise at this time, and also establishing a clear strategy to start to move the needle once places open up, right? And so not every state and every county and every city will open up at the same time. So understanding kind of the roadmap of once a particular area starts to open up, where do we start implementing digital strategies? What's our messaging going to be, and how do we slow roll into that? So developing those strategies at this time is key in order to really have everything set in place. So once things start to open up, you have that ramp up that's really efficient and quick, and you can start pivoting based on results instead of scrambling to get ramped up.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jessica.